elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves. Take it to the top one time non-stop. Gotta go, gotta flow. Take it to the...
Hello and welcome to PhD Hard Talk. Thank you so much, Folefac, for getting in contact. Could you please introduce yourself, your research and your university?
Hi, Nona. Thank you for having me here today on your program on PhD Hard Talk. So my name is Folefac Charlemagne, and at the moment I'm based in Denmark, where I am doing my PhD at the Department of Experimental Clinical Oncology at Aarhus University Hospital. And so my research is focused on cancer. As you may already know, cancer is the second most cause of death in the world today, just behind cardiovascular diseases. And over the years, radiation has been identified as the second best treatment option for cancer, just behind surgery. But despite the superiority of radiation for cancer treatment, it also has its own limitations. And one of which is that the surrounding tissues where the cancer cells live can become toxic when we expose them to radiation. And another shortcoming is that within the tumor microenvironment where the cancer cells are growing, we have some stubborn cancer cells where we call them the hypoxic cancer cells, which are less oxygenated. And so these cancer cells are usually resistant to radiotherapy. And so with this, it becomes difficult that, okay, if we have to eradicate all the cancers in patients, then we have to give more radiation. But giving more radiation means that we have to damage more of the healthy tissues. And so over the years, there have been numerous approaches by researchers, scientists to see how they can optimize the application of radiotherapy. And one area where that we are trying to optimize that is the use of hyperthermia. And as far as oncology is concerned, when we talk of hyperthermia, we are talking of heating the body, either the whole body or specific area, with temperatures of around 40 to 45 degrees Celsius for 1 hour. So that is hyperthermia in oncology. And when we heat the body within that range, the body is, the temperature is not harmful to the healthy tissues as the case of radiotherapy. But on the other hand, it has some specific roles that it can play in terms of damaging cancer cells. But when we also combine this temperature with radiotherapy, then we can also optimize radiation effects on cancer cells. And it means that on the long run, we can reduce the amount of radiation that we are exposing to our healthy tissues. But as far as my PhD is concerned, I am using preclinical models, that is mice and tumor models, to see how I can come out with the optimal condition between applying radiation on one hand and radiotherapy on radiation on one hand and hyperthermia on the other hand.
Right. Thank you very much. So you've said so much, and I think I will start with why cancer? What really excited you about going into cancer research?
Yes, my background, for example, is on biology. And so when I study my master's at Belgium University, because that is where I did my master's studies, I was exposed to various mechanisms where we become exposed to various diseases. And in the course of that, I had to go and do an internship in one of Belgian nuclear research center where they are treating cancer, where they are doing research on cancer. And in the course of that, I noticed that, oh, this was the area where I was more interested. And beside that, growing up in Africa, I have come across a lot of patients who are suffering from cancer. But in Africa, we have limited research on that. So one of my aim was, how can I be of help to these people? So that was also one of the reasons why I decided to go into cancer research.
That's interesting. So my next question was going to be, how does your research benefit the community? And you said that basically in Africa in general as a continent, the issue is there isn't that much research at the moment. So seeing that your research is based in Denmark and they have the resources, how are we going to get those resources to Africa or maybe the global south? To put it that way, how do you envision that? Because you're the pioneer, I will take it for now. I know you're working with other colleagues because that's mentioned, but I'm speaking to you. How does that translate back to the global south?
Yes, as a scientist or as a researcher as myself, I'm not only limiting my knowledge to benefit those in Africa, because if you go back to Africa, you have some Europeans who have left, those who have left Europe or North America, and they are also working in Africa on various diseases. So at this moment in my life, I just want to see how I can be of help to patients, be it in Africa or in any area of the world. So at the moment, that is my main focus.
Okay. Thank you very much. And in terms of identifying the research gap, because we know that we need to in our line of work, how did you identify your research gap?
First of all, I came in contact with this European project known as the Hyperboost project, which is a project which is sponsored by the European Union, where they have brought together, the main objective was to bring together early stage researchers like myself to see how they can optimize this treatment of cancer, and cancer where we combine radiation and hyperthermia. So I would say that I was lucky somehow that before my PhD, some of these issues were already being raised. And so I just came in and I've been doing some literature to try to find out what have been done, which doses have been applied before, so that at the end of the day, I'll be able to answer some of the questions that I'm aiming to.
Thank you very much. And you've mentioned in terms of hyperthermia that it's got better benefits compared to what we're used to in terms of treatment. So what are the cons that you've identified? Because nothing's perfect, essentially, and we all know that. I love sugar, but sugar gives me diabetes, you know, and weight gain. But I love sugar. So what are the cons of hyperthermia treatments within cancer?
Yes, before I will go to giving you the cons of hyperthermia treatment as an option, as a treatment for cancer, it will be important that we understand a little bit how radiation actually kills cancer cells. Okay. So for radiation to kill cancer cells, it can directly, it's like somebody shooting you with a gun and you are dying immediately. So radiation can directly destroy the DNA of cancer cells when exposed to it. And another way that radiation can kill cancer cells is that it can react with water molecules, which are found in our body, because we know most of the body is made of water. So it can react with these water molecules and form what we call reacting oxygen species. And then subsequent reaction of these species with the DNA of cancer will lead to more of cancer killing. And in this way, more cancer cells are being killed. Now, the way the body is developed, when the DNA of the body is being damaged, being it by radiation or it could be drug or whatsoever agent, then there are mechanisms within our body which try to repair the DNA. So it means that if we damage the cancer cell's DNA and allow it like that, the cancer cell can repair the DNA and then continue living. And so one way where hyperthermia can be of help is that hyperthermia can stop the DNA from being repaired. So when we bring in radiation and do the damage, we can bring in a little bit of radiation and do the damage. Then we bring in hyperthermia, which is going to inhibit the repair process. So that is one way. Another way will be that if we apply radiation, if we apply hyperthermia before radiation, then we open up blood vessels. So it means that we are bringing in more oxygen to the areas where we want to irradiate. So it also means that we are making available more reacting oxygen species, which radiation can react with. So that is another way in which hyperthermia can help in treating cancer when we combine it with radiotherapy. Then another option is that, like I said, we have some stubborn cancer cells, which I call them hypoxic cancer cell population, which they have less oxygen because, you know, when the tumor develops, they form their own blood vessels, and the blood vessels are not well formed. And as a result of that, some cancer cells will not have more oxygen, while some will have oxygen because they are relying on the nearby blood vessels at that moment. And so those hypoxic cancer cell population, which are resistant to radiotherapy, can be killed directly using hyperthermia temperature. And the good thing with hyperthermia temperature is that the temperature is non-toxic to healthy tissues. So it means that if we are bringing in hyperthermia temperature, it means at the end of the day, we are reducing the amount of radiotherapy that we are applying. And it means that at the end of the day, we are improving on the quality of life of our patient, because it's not just about treating the patient, but it's also trying to see how, on the long run, the quality of the life of the patient can be improved. So those are just some of the ways in which we can deliver hyperthermia.
No, I appreciate that, but I know that there must be some cons. So that's what I'm trying to understand. And, you know, in terms of what are they? What have you identified? Because that's where your postdoc might come in terms of how we fix the blind spot. So what have you identified to date, or you haven't?
So as far as what I've identified is the time between applying radiation and hyperthermia, because the time will be important. If we give radiation today, and after it will come back after tomorrow, or maybe 24 hours after, maybe before coming back, the repair process has already taken place. So first, I have been able to identify that the time interval, which shows that if we reduce the time interval, if the closer the time interval, the better the response. So that is one thing that I've been able to identify. And then another thing which I've been able to identify is the radiation dose, because the radiation that I'm using is what we call stereotactic radiation, because in radiotherapy, we have conventional radiotherapy, and then we have stereotactic radiation. And with conventional radiotherapy, we apply radiation in smaller doses, but in higher fractions. In smaller doses, but in multiple fractions. While in stereotactic radiation, we apply higher doses. It could be like maybe 3 to 5 gray, but in smaller fractions. So I've also been, in fact, it has already been identified that when we give this higher dose, we can destroy the blood vessels. And then if we destroy the blood vessels, then it means we can contribute to this hypoxic cancer cell population. And so with the hyperthermia temperature, which is at the minimum temperature that we have been able to identify is 40. So at 40 degrees, we can be able to kill more of this hypoxic cancer cell population. But the higher the temperature, right up to 42.5 degrees Celsius, which have also been identified, we have more killing at those higher temperature. So as far as my PhD is concerned, I have identified that the shorter the time interval between applying stereotactic radiation, the better result. And the higher the temperature, the better the result. But we still have a lot of things that in the course of my project, I'm aiming to identify, which will be the mechanism which are occurring, what is happening behind when we combine these two modalities. So those are the long-term projects which I'm still aiming to identify. But of course, the experiments are still ongoing. I'm not just using, with radiation, I'm just not just using, we have different sources of radiation. And as far as my project is concerned, I'm using two main sources. One is photon radiation, another one is proton irradiation. So the result that I'm telling you at the moment are like the preliminary result. And also, this result that I've identified, the finding that I've identified will be irrelevant if we didn't know what is happening on healthy tissue. So I have to repeat all those treatments, but on non-tumor-bearing mice, because all these conditions that I've identified are on tumor-bearing mice, but I am repeating the same treatment, but on healthy tissues. And so I've also been able to identify that at temperatures of 40 to 45 degrees, combined with 3 fractions of irradiation up to 45 gray. So like 15 times 3 up to 45 gray, it has a less toxicity effect on healthy tissues.
So then I'm just thinking out loud, and I don't know if you've thought about this, because I'm thinking if you're looking at timeframes, as you've explained, that it has to be closer.
Yes.
What is the cost to the service user? And is this going to be in the private sector? Because I can see the public sector's pockets just like having holes, because this sounds expensive. Or is that something that you haven't thought about, or is it something that's been tabled?
Maybe I should first of all highlight that hyperthermia treatment is not. I'm not the one. I'm not the first person. It's not something that I'm discovering it today. It's something that which has been discovered, and it's even been applied in Netherlands and in Switzerland and also in Germany. But as far as my project is concerned, it's just trying to see how we can improve on it. And at the end of the day, if the results are good, I'm sure that most health insurance are going to commit for it, and it will not just be something of private, but also will be something which the government might adopt it for the general public to use it. But what I would say also that is that we have very few centers at the moment which are applying hyperthermia, because for you to apply the heat to specific areas, you need the equipment. But not all centers have those equipments. So it means that somebody will have to move from one center where you receive radiation and then travel to another center where they are applying hyperthermia to get it. So as far as I'm concerned at the moment, I'm just trying to optimize this condition and tell them that, okay, this is what will give us the best result at this point in time.
No, I love the interventions. Thank you. So going to your data subjects, which is the mice, are you looking at female and male, or are you just focusing on males? Because I know that there's differences. What are you doing?
I'm using both females and males. But so far, as far as this treatment is concerned, we have not seen any we have not seen any difference between using both females and males as far as applying radiation and hyperthermia.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have thought that there would be a difference between the male and the female. That's interesting.
It wouldn't be because I didn't expect it to be, because it's not like the outcome depend on something coming out from the males, like it could be hormonal influence or whatsoever. But it's a type of treatment which, if it works, then it's going to work for every cell.
No, thank you very much. So, in terms of the next question that I have in regards to your research, I know you've got your data subjects. Are you mixing a bit of qualitative and quantitative in terms of mixed methods, in terms of your write-up? Where are you in terms of that? What's your strategy?
At the moment, all my studies are in vivo studies. So it becomes very difficult for me to begin writing at the moment, because it's only at the end of the day that I will get all the data that I can start writing. So I can tell you that I'm just collecting the data at the moment, hoping that towards the end, I will have all the results and then I know how to go about it. But of course, I'm doing some literature review, trying to see how I'm going to go about it, and also what has been done or what others are doing at the moment, so that at the end of the day, I have something very good for the public.
Okay, so what advice do you have for somebody who's going through a similar process to you when it comes to writing their literature review?
Something which I always adopt is that the earlier the better, because at the end of the day, if you are doing, especially when you are doing in vivo studies, when I talk of in vivo study, I mean because we are using animals. If it was just something which I'm just doing in vitro, like, okay, then I wouldn't have much problem with that. But with the in vivo study, like I already mentioned, you have your result at the end. Maybe at the end of the day, you just have like 3 or 4 months that you have to write everything up. But I'm using advantage that, okay, these results are not coming out at the moment. At this moment, I'm already doing some writings, try to write, but I know I will still have to come back to what I've written at the moment to rewrite it. So anybody doing in vivo studies who is expecting to have results towards the end of the PhD or towards the end of the research should start at the early stage to do the writings. And I'm sure it also applies to even all others who are doing in vitro studies, that, okay, the earlier you start writing, the better, so that you will not be overwhelmed towards the end.